Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor, and I'm one of the admissions counselors here at Kentucky Wesleyan. I know a couple of you guys are my kiddos. I have the Western Kentucky area, the Eastern Kentucky area, and then I also have a couple local territories. So I have OHS, Peterson, Webster, Houston, all of those fun counties. So if you guys ever have any questions, I'm the one that you need to reach out to. But I'm also joined by a special guest today, Dr. Gibson. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce that to you.
Hello, yes. I'm Dr. Gibson. I'm an assistant professor of zoology here at KWC and the program coordinator for zoology. I've been at KWC since January of 2018. Before that, I was doing a postdoctoral fellowship in Scotland at the University of Strathclyde in the Department of Electronic and Electrical Engineering. That seems a little weird, being that I'm a zoologist and a biologist working in an engineering department, but the group I worked with worked in a field called biomimicry. This is where they get inspiration from biology to make cool things, and what they did basically was focused on hearing. So we used insects as a model, and the goal was to generate novel sensors based on the hearing of insects. And this ties very well with my specialties. So I'm an animal behavioralist, and I specialize in animal communication, specifically either acoustic communication, which is what I did at Strathclyde, but also vibratory communication, which is where animals send their communication signals through plants and plant material rather than through the air. So my background is largely working with spiders and insects, those things that don't have backbones. And those are the things that I'm quite passionate about.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who don't know, we are actually the only college in all of Kentucky that offers zoology as a major, so it is pretty exciting. And I know a lot of our incoming students, that's one of our largest programs. So for you, Dr. Gibson, what do you think is most unique about our zoology program and our class sizes and stuff?
Well, I'll kind of piggyback on what you just said. So the zoology program is the fastest growing program at KWC. And with growth means that we're going to continue to grow and develop opportunities for students. And that's always a good sign. I think what's really cool about the program is that as a zoology major, you're going to survey all of the metazoan phyla, which just means animal phyla. And you have to do this as a part of your degree. And so you'll do this over the course of a year, usually your second year. But we also offer more in-depth courses on some of those groups that we cover more broadly. So for example, I teach a course in entomology, which is the study of insects. And if you have that interest, you could take that course and learn a lot more information about those very cool organisms. We also provide and require students to have hands-on experience as they matriculate. What does this mean? Well, we encourage students to have internships at zoos or other nonprofits. This can also mean that you do directed research with a faculty member. So most of our faculty here at KWC, they have some form of undergraduate research program, and you can get involved in their research. And as a zoology major, you're required to have some kind of experience like that. And I think that's a really important point and a very cool feature of our program.
Awesome. So with all of that fun stuff happening, what do the class sizes look like? So is it a bunch of kids trying to do all of this at the same time, or what is that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it's variable. So our introductory to biology course, which all zoology and biology students are required to take, since biology and zoology are the largest majors on campus, I think that's true. The introductory class can be quite large. So I think we usually have 50 students across 2 sections of that class. So there's usually about 100 or so students across 2 sections. But after that introductory course, all of your higher level courses tend to be much smaller. Everything from 4 to 6 students up to around 20 to 25 students and everything in between. For example, my last invertebrate zoology course I taught, we only had 12 students. And I think this is fairly typical for the higher level courses. And so I think that's what you would expect. Labs are also in that same category. So labs generally, the maximum we can hold in a lab is about 22 to 24 students. But in general, our labs are not that full. They're usually around 12 to 18 students, again, depending on the course. And in terms of activities that you do in labs, there's a huge range, everything from conducting experiments to learning how to identify different animal groups.
Awesome. So I also graduated from the zoology program here back in 2015, and I can definitely agree with that. My smallest class was 4 students. So it was really cool. It was kind of just like a giant conversation the entire time. It wasn't really lecture based, which is something that I really enjoyed because I'm one of those kids that I had a lot of questions. So I was never intimidated to ask all of them. But to piggyback off what you had said about your labs, so what do those typically look like? Obviously, they're hands-on, but are they all on campus, or what do those look like?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It obviously depends on the subject matter. So, for example, the course I teach in invertebrate zoology, that's a very lab-heavy class because what we're doing is spending most of the time looking at minute details of these organisms so that we can learn what their structure and how they function. And so that's very hands-on, but usually lab-based. The other classes like environmental science and ecology, which I'm also teaching, those courses have a mixture of lab and trips associated with those. So future ecology labs are going to be largely trip-based. So there's lots of parks in and around Owensboro, and we will probably utilize those parks to do ecological measurements and experiments.
Awesome. So I know you touched a little bit about what makes our program unique, but is there anything else that you would like to throw in there that is your personal favorite maybe, or something students might like?
Sure, I would say that what I like is the opportunity for growth. And so there's a lot of things that are going to be changing in the near future for the zoology program. There's some key things that we're trying to work on. So I know parents are always interested in hearing if their students can get internships or access to those types of things. And I'm working very hard over the next year to try to formalize relationships with zoos and aquariums in the region for pathways for our students to have internships at those institutions. Obviously, not every student can have an internship with one of those pathways. It would still probably be somewhat competitive, but hopefully that competition can be within KWC students and not more broad, if that makes sense. Also trying to formalize some more opportunities with local wildlife management agencies. We'll see how that goes in the future. And then one of the things that I'm very passionate about and really hope to develop here at KWC is a zoology outreach program. This is where zoology students here would be able to take live ambassadors like animals such as cockroaches or snakes or geckos to classrooms around the Davies County School District area and teach very key things and focused subjects related to these organisms, environmental science, ecology, behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things that are hopefully going to take place within the next few years here in the zoology program, KWC.
Awesome. Well, all of that sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have some of those when I was a student there, so I'm very excited for the new kiddos coming in. I know you had mentioned something about internships, so I know that's a very big hot topic, especially in this field. For those of you guys who don't know, internships are a crucial part of just getting a part-time job or full-time job in the field. So what are our current students, what are they looking at for internships versus the students who just graduated and their jobs and stuff? What is that looking like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll start first by talking about career opportunities and what people do generally after a zoology degree. And I'll start first by saying that whatever side of the coin you fall on with regard to the global climate change debate, there is definitely growth in job sectors that involve zoologists and biologists. As the global temperature continues to rise, this has profound effects on ecosystems. And we are going to need biologists and zoologists to understand how these changes are going to affect us and the other things that live with us. But I would say in general, our students pursue three basic paths. So one is work in the public sector. And so this is students working at national parks, state parks, as naturalists. We have a few students that have done this in the past. We also have students that join zoos, and some zoos are in this weird state of being both private and public. So they fit both in these categories. But we've had past students become trainers, zookeepers, and even work in education. We have a recent grad that just got accepted to the education program at Cincinnati Zoo. So that's exciting. I was a part of that program a while ago, and I loved it. We also have students that work in conservation centers. We have students that also work for the Humane Society and other nonprofits. We have students that pursue, as I mentioned, the private sector as well. This can be nature centers. We have a student that's doing animal grooming, dog training. We have some students that are doing lab and animal technician work, and also a student that does wildlife pest control. So lots of things in both the private and public sector. And then finally, I would say some of our students, and a growing number of our students, are deciding to pursue graduate degrees. That's master's degrees and PhDs. And with the pursuit of master's degrees and PhDs, this just elevates what a student could do as a career. Essentially, a master's degree student or a PhD student can do most of those things that I've already listed, but then they tend to have more responsibility, and with that responsibility comes more money. So that can always be positive. So those, I would say, are the three general categories that zoology students pursue.
Awesome. Well, I know you talked about a different variety of things as far as like career paths and those. So I know a lot of zoology students will come in and they would love all the help that they can get as far as like what to study, what classes to take. So I know minors are something a lot of kiddos don't think about. I know I definitely didn't when I came in. So what can you piggyback off of all those different career paths that you just said of what minors might just be a little extra helping hand for those?
Sure, that's a great question. And certainly any student that I would advise, their minor really would be dependent on two main things. One, their interests outside of zoology, and then two, what their career path is intended to be. So for students that are really interested in being trainers or keepers, I think the logical minor for those types of students would be psychology. Very, very important that you understand how the brain works and how to relate that to biology is quite important. And so I think that's very helpful. If you're interested in going more the public route with working with conservation centers or working with parks, you can pursue a couple different minors. You could pursue psychology as well. Because you're going to be dealing with people in those scenarios. It's also quite common to pursue criminal justice, and it's also quite common to have an emphasis, not a minor, but an emphasis in environmental studies. So you could do a minor in criminal justice and an emphasis in environmental studies, and that would be a really good combination for someone who's interested in working in parks or in conservation. And then if you're interested in doing work, or if you're interested in graduate school, largely you're going to have to take chemistry. For as unfortunate as that might be for some folks, minoring in chemistry is a really good thing to couple with a zoology degree for graduate school, because a lot of graduate schools require Gen Chem 1 and 2, and some even require organic chemistry. And so that gets you pretty close to a chemistry minor.
Awesome. Thank you.
But I think you did, I think you did something a little different, right? You minored in business.
I did.
Right,
I minored in business. So way back when I graduated in 2015, I was a zoology major, but a business minor because why not? My mom made me take it, but that's okay. No, I loved it. It was just different kind of, made me think, use a different part of my brain, I would say. I actually went into the training side of things. So I was a zookeeper for several different species. So that's the route that I went into. So it just depends on what you're interested in. But from being a zookeeper and working in the field for almost 5 years, I can definitely second all of those majors, especially psychology is so helpful. Just knowing your animals and knowing how to encounter different scenarios that are happening, and a huge selling point for just training in general.
I would just add that your business degree with a zoology major actually is not. I don't think that's a far-fetched angle, because a lot of zoologists who become keepers, and they work at institutions that they need to make money, and so I think having that background in business can help generate pathways to generate money and how that works, and so that I think it's a nice fit.
Well, that and just public speaking in general, I think people underestimate how much human confrontation people have in the zookeeping world, just because, you're dealing with animals and people think that that's it. They must think, oh, well, they don't like people, so they deal with animals every day. That is not the case at all. So a lot of times to be successful in that field, you do have to be able to talk to a wide variety of kiddos and adults, and part of my job at the Oklahoma City Zoo was talking to stadiums full of people. So I had to be able to relay the same message to a 3-year-old who can hardly understand what I'm saying about these sea lions versus an entire family that ranges from that 3-year-old to a 60-year-old man. So being able to show your passion and inspiration and finding what words to use, that was a huge selling point that KWC got me between the zoology program and business, just because if you would have told me in college that I would have done so much public speaking, I would have laughed at you. But now it's one of my favorite things, being able to inspire the next generation. So yeah, that was a huge selling point for me.
You make a really good and compelling point, which is part of the reason why I would love to, as I mentioned before, is develop a zoology outreach program to get students experience on how to scale communication at a variety of different levels, and they can have that experience here before they venture out and to try to get internships and try to get jobs.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely different when you're talking to a room full of your peers versus a stadium full of strangers, and having a mic and being thrown out there on stage, and you're like, oh, now I have to do this.
Yes.
But yeah, it's very helpful, and especially with that program, and hopefully what it can be is you will also be handling animals while also trying to public speak. So just having the combination of okay, I need to read my animal's behavior versus, okay, this is where these people are at. This kid just came really close. So being able to read an entire environment like that is going to be a huge resume booster for these kiddos. And the students, just because that is something that not many undergrads get unless they're in an internship setting. So I think that's a huge selling point.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think it sounds awesome. Sign me up. I can help you. But that is really all I have for you.
Oh, perfect.
Unless you have some fun advice or questions that you have.
Well, I would just say, at least for myself as an educator, so I'm also quite passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about educating. And I'll just say that I've been honored to be a part of the students' journey in academics so far, and I would love to see new students come to KWC and be a part of their academic journey as well. I will say, for me as an instructor, and I hope for you watching this video as either a parent or as a student, I just encourage all of you to be lifelong learners. Your education doesn't stop when you leave KWC, and it certainly didn't start when you plan to come to KWC, or when you come to KWC. And so I just want to inspire everyone to be lifelong learners and enjoy learning. It's wonderful to do.
Yeah. And one thing he mentioned, piggyback off that, is that once you are part of the family, you are always part of the family. So no matter what part of the journey that you are on, whether you're kind of deciding on what college to go to, or you're already committed, or whatever it is, that you are here for the long run. So after I graduated, I spent almost 5 years in the field, and now coming back and working for it, it was like nothing had changed. So just coming back, and it is a giant community and a family. So you never have to feel like you're alone, and that is just amazing. So I love to hear that you also want to be still connected to your students and all of that.
Yep. And particularly important at this time.
Yes, for sure. But we want to thank you guys all so much for joining us on this Tuesday. So thanks so much, and see you guys soon.
Thanks, Taylor.